the TV2 Action News special, Hurricane Hugo, wrapped to restoration.
Hurricane Hugo will be remembered as a killer. The storm left 26 dead in South Carolina. Hundreds more were hurt. Hugo tore a wide path of destruction through the state, and no place was hit harder than the Low Country. The storm damaged 80,000 homes, destroyed more than 5,000, and left another 17,000 homes uninhabitable, at least for now.
I'm Terry Casey. I'm standing where a home once stood in McClellanville. A home obliterated by a wall of water 20 feet high. A storm surge that plowed ashore, bulldozing trees and homes.
Along with the storm surge came 130-mile-an-hour winds, winds that mowed down trees as far inland as Charlotte, North Carolina. It's so bad, it's been termed a forestry disaster. To put it in some tangible terms, enough trees were lost to rebuild the city of Charleston 40 times over.
It was overwhelming, and I still get choked up bad, and it's been a long time, and I'm still, I loved it down here. I grew up down here on the beach every summer, time I was 7, and I just love Folly Beach.
This was a storm that touched everyone. Perhaps it was your car that was hit by flying debris, or maybe it was the roof on your house. For others, it was their place of work, and thousands of people are now out of work due to the storm. I'm Leslie Lyles. In the next 2 hours, we will take you through the darkest moments of the storm and the days of chaos and despair that followed. But there are also stories about people fighting back, neighbor, helping the Low Country to rebuild.
Everybody is pulling together, and the children to the grandparents are all here, and we've got folks that are coming from everywhere, you know, to bring us supplies.
The storm has changed the face of the Low Country forever. Homes can be rebuilt, but it takes generations to replace the trees. Damage from Hugo is estimated in more than $3 billion, but no one really knows. Some damage is still to be discovered. Tonight, more than 2 weeks after the storm, thousands of people remain homeless, trying to survive on handouts from the various relief agencies that have been working around the clock.
I'm Dan Ashley. Tonight we will take you through the events that led up to the storm and beyond. We will also take a look at our future as we try to rebuild from Hugo. Many people still don't have electricity yet, so we assume many of you were not watching when we signed back on the air early Friday morning and began our around-the-clock news coverage.
Some of what we will show you tonight comes from our live coverage, but you will see plenty of stories and videotape that we haven't had the chance to show you yet.
It was on cinder block, and it was okay. It was a big house, and it was pretty strong, but not stronger than that. And I don't have anything left.
By Monday, September 18th, we knew that Hurricane Hugo may come up the eastern seaboard and be a threat to the Charleston area. We had already seen the destruction Hugo had brought in St. Croix in Puerto Rico. We knew Hugo was a killer.
I'm Rob Fowler. We started bringing you hourly updates on the tracking of Hurricane Hugo. We also told you to prepare in terms of buying supplies. By Wednesday, Hurricane Hugo had gotten stronger and continued moving toward us. A hurricane watch was issued.
Nails, hammers, and plywood are in hot demand tonight on Folly Beach. Residents are boarding up their windows and doors in their beachfront property from the vicious storm.
You worried it may go this time?
Well, I'm not worried. I'm reconciled to it. So, you know, if it goes, it goes. We've enjoyed it for 35 years, so what else can you ask?
Mary Connor's backyard is the Atlantic Ocean. 4 generations have lived in this wood house, and Connor hopes it's still around for the 5th, but she isn't holding her breath. The Tetrick family is just as pessimistic. Pictures were removed from the walls today and lamps dismantled, just in case the windows shatter.
We don't expect anything to be here when we come back.
Others are simply packing up the family and moving out. They've been through this before.
That's about all for this morning.
Ever been through one of these before?
3 of them over here. And we just don't want to take any chances. We live on James Island. It's much easier to get on James Island than stay on Folly Beach and sweat it out.
Here on Seabrook Island, only a handful of houses have been boarded up. Many of the residents don't live here year-round, but time is running out to protect their investment. Over on Bohicket Creek, some boat owners have put their vessels out to sea. Others are tying them down at the docks and waiting out the storm. Hospitals in downtown Charleston are preparing for the worst.
Most of them already have emergency disaster plans, and now hospitals are putting their plans in gear. That may include sending patients home.
Those that are not absolutely required to be in an acute care hospital will probably be asked to triage out to other facilities or to their home.
But for those patients who can't be discharged, extra supplies are being brought in. Roper Hospital brought in 700 gallons of bottled water and will receive 1,000 more gallons by tomorrow. Hospital officials are also checking their generators to make sure they're ready to go. At Roper, the system generates enough energy to power the half of the hospital, which will be needed most during the storm.
We're calling family members this morning to just alert them that we are preparing for evacuation.
Nursing homes are also making plans for the hurricane. Sandpiper Convalescent Center in Mount Pleasant will be sending patients to homes of relatives or placing them in hotels. Those who need 24-hour supervised care will be placed in hospitals.
We're in constant contact with emergency preparedness, so they will advise us. And it will be a joint decision between our administrator and emergency preparedness as to when we go.
That could be as early as tomorrow. If the hurricane continues in our direction, most hospitals say their emergency plans will go into effect tomorrow, which means their staffs will begin working around the clock to keep the hospital in operation during the storm. Angela Brown, TV2 Action News, Charleston.
Ladies and gentlemen, Charleston County is now under a state of emergency. It is anticipated that Hurricane Hugo will be in the Charleston area earlier than first reported. Gale force winds are predicted by 3 p.m. tomorrow, Thursday, making weather conditions and travel conditions very dangerous. It is imperative that all residents of Charleston County, especially those living in beach areas, low-lying areas, barrier islands, property adjacent to tidal creeks, and all mobile home residents in the county leave as soon as possible.
By daybreak Thursday, the hurricane watch was upgraded to a hurricane warning. An evacuation order was given to residents of barrier islands and low-lying areas likely to flood. As the winds began to rage and the rain began to fall, the tide along Charleston's Battery began to rise. By 11 o'clock tonight, city officials expect the storm surge from Hurricane Hugo will sweep over the Battery walls and into the streets.
The greatest danger to life is rising water.
Mayor Riley today announced a mandatory evacuation of all single-story homes along the peninsula and strongly urged others to get out of town as well. Many residents boarded up, gassed up, and got out. By 3 o'clock, many of the streets of Charleston were already empty, and there was that eerie feeling that we were taking pictures of the calm before the storm. In otherwise empty streets, some residents are loading up sandbags. Families who plan to ride out the storm are finding themselves making what could be costly last-minute decisions.
At first it was fun and exciting, but now it's just getting too serious, and we're realizing there's just some things we can't save.
At the Charleston Marina, Oscar Fitzhenry made last-minute adjustments to try to save his boat. Now he's out to try to save himself.
Put the anchor chain that direction and just commit it to the Lord now.
And the tide continues to rise. St. Brian, TV2 Action News, Charleston.
It looks a lot like a ghost town out here. As you can see, the wind is really beginning to pick up now. We can really feel that a storm is approaching. And if you look behind me, we're here as we're entering the Isle of Palms. Those police officers are stopping motorists as they try to enter the island. And unless they have an extremely good excuse, such as a medical emergency or having to pick up a relative, particularly an elderly relative, they're not going to get on the island. They simply aren't going to let them go. The island is literally shut down in preparations for Hurricane Hugo. And as this storm gets ever closer, there is a real growing sense of concern here on the Isle of Palms and on Sullivan's Island.
The couple that lives in this Sullivan's Island home are celebrating the birth of a baby. The sign says it's a boy, and it's a big boy named Hugo. We found these men boarding up. When they're finished, they will leave Sullivan's Island.
Just for being safe, plus it helps everybody over here, all the emergency people, you know, they ain't got to worry about a lot of people on the island, so that's just easier for them.
This couple is busy getting their belongings off the floor. They, too, are loading up their car and heading inland.
It's dangerous. I mean, I'd rather be alive, and, you know, I can't replace myself for show. Replace our valuables.
She, of course, is absolutely right. And on the Isle of Palms, those trying to get onto the island are met with this.
Sir, may I help you?
Yeah, I need to go to
35th Avenue to board up a house that we made.
Isle of Palms Mayor Carmen Bunch says 75% of the island has been evacuated. Most residents have been cooperative.
We might find one or two that have refused to leave, and I understand what we're doing is taking down their name, their list, and the next of kin, and letting them know that we'll warn them to get off, and if they don't want to go, other than carrying them out and handcuffing them, we can't force them.
The Navy moved its ships out to sea early in the day. Also, the State Ports Authority moved its trucks and containers. Roads were clogged most of the day as thousands of people heeded the evacuation order and headed inland to places like Atlanta, Augusta, and Columbia. But there were also those who thought Hugo was like many other storms that had come and gone. They were going to stay and brave out the storm.
As the countdown to landfall continues, Hurricane Hugo continues to telegraph what lies ahead.
We're the only ones left.
But still some refuse to listen. These residents on Folly Beach say they plan to stay and ride it out.
Right now we're about 13 foot above the water, but we don't think you're going to hit. So we're having a hurricane party.
But luckily, most people in the low country are treating this storm with more respect. Most people recognize that these 8 to 10 foot swells and 30 to 40 mile an hour winds are just a very small taste of things to come.
Packing 120 mile per hour winds and expected to strike the Carolina coast at high tide, waves now rushing under this Folly Beach restaurant could soon be crashing over it. While police can't force everyone to leave, they have continued to make last-minute checks, making sure no one who wants to evacuate is left behind.
Like, for example, we have one woman that was invalid, had a nurse, and if the nurses leave, we're going to have to take her. You know, just take her for her own good because she can't take care of herself.
How strong this storm will actually be when it makes landfall is hard to predict. There's a good chance that those who choose to stand up to this storm and stare it in the eye may not be around to talk about it. On Folly Beach, Ren Scott, TV2, Action News.
Some people didn't have the means to evacuate the area but needed to leave their homes. So thousands of Charleston area residents crowded into shelters.
As Hugo draws near and the winds increase, evidently more residents are taking the storm more seriously. At Gaillard Auditorium, there's a separate section for families and women.
I think it's serious, and other people should think the same way.
It is the waiting that has caused the strain. Some are just sleeping the time away, while the children find ways of holding off the boredom.
Are you glad you're here? You glad you're here?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Do you feel safe?
Yeah.
Other smaller children are too young to know about the fears that you see in some of the wiser eyes.
Age of 6 days old.
6 days? Oh, wow. How do you feel right now about what's happening?
Well, right now I'm happy I had some place to come to. I know that much. Bring the family, or, you know, things start happening so fast. You know, I've been through it before, and so far God will take care of all of us. I hope he'll do it again this time.
And that is the wish of other families, like this one moving into the James Simmons Elementary School in Charleston. I'm Ted Knight, TV2 Action News, Charleston.
Lived here for 46 years, and the answer to that is there will be more flooding as a result of this storm than any Charlestonian has ever experienced. It will boggle the mind, and it is going to be extraordinary. So if you live in low-lying areas, take this remaining window of opportunity to evacuate.
You can see just to the southeast of the Charleston area, there's the eye of the storm, very, very potent storm. And as we mentioned, hurricane force winds extending 140 miles out from the center of Hurricane Hugo. Now, obviously, with a lot of rain possible, flash flood watch is in effect for the entire state. Actually, this is for today and tomorrow. That includes all of the state of South Carolina.
You know, we've been advising these people for a day and a half, almost 2 days now, that this was going to be a dangerous storm, that the potential was there, the biggest threat potential in years. And it's almost ironic that 30 years almost to the day, Gracie came across this area. And I'm sure there were some people that did not heed the warnings that were given then, and there will be some now that did not heed the warnings. So basically try to fend for yourself. If you haven't moved yet and you're not planning to move, I hope the Lord has mercy on your soul and it helps you survive.
And because we are upgraded now to a Category 4, there is more concern about what will be done if we need to evacuate the hospitals. As I told you earlier, some military van-type vehicles may be used for that purpose. Also, SCE&G buses have already been used to evacuate at least one nursing home. These buses will become crucial throughout the storm for evacuations, especially evacuations of patients.
Hurricane Hugo. He is on his way. Rob says expected to make landfall around midnight or so.
Yeah, a little after midnight. Midnight and 2 the way. We need to mention that we are obviously going to leave our TV station, the studios in Mount Pleasant. I'll be going to the National Weather Service. You will be going to the Emergency Preparedness. So we also are evacuating the Mount Pleasant area, but we will continue to broadcast, give you the latest information.
And that we want to reiterate. We will stay on the air or make every attempt to bring you the information you need to have. Now, for all of us here at TV2 Action News, I'm Terry Casey. Good night. We will see you throughout the night. I went to Emergency Preparedness Headquarters with Leslie. We were broadcasting live at 10:15 that night when the announcement came.
Stay where you are. Hold secure.
As the roof started to rip off the building where we were, we ended up huddled in a concrete hallway, hoping we would live. Right now is the eye of Hurricane Hugo as it passes over the Charleston area. And it's only during this time, the calm, the temporary calm, that we're allowed to evacuate the Emergency Preparedness Center.
Where were you during Hurricane Hugo? That is a question that will be asked over and over again, similar to the shooting of JFK. I was here at the National Weather Service office in North Charleston, keeping you updated on the storm using their radar. It was quite scary here. A couple of times it sounded like the roof was being pulled off, and many of us ran down this hallway to the bathroom for protection.
Terry, Leslie, and I kept Dan Ashley updated by phone. It was nearly midnight as Dan was doing an update from the transmitter. It wasn't very pretty, but Dan was the only broadcaster left on the air in the Low Country. If nothing else, it was information.
Good evening, everyone. Dan Ashley reporting live from our transmitter facility in Arundel. I spoke with our weather person, Rob Fowler, just a few minutes ago. He is at the National Weather Service office in North Charleston. He describes a very serious situation where he is right now. The eye wall, apparently, Rob tells me, is now moving across Charleston. That is when we expect that tremendous storm surge. We've heard reports of up to 18 feet of water. That is now, the eye wall is now moving forward across Charleston. The eye will not yet hit for perhaps another half hour or so. It's just off the coast now. Wind speeds gusting up to 100 miles an hour downtown Charleston. A very serious situation. If you were with us a little while ago, we were reporting to you live outside, but it became obviously too serious and too dangerous for us to continue to do that, so we've moved inside to our studio here. Now, as we have been telling you, the worst, unfortunately, and we hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the worst is yet to come. The eye has not yet passed over us, and when it does, we will have perhaps an hour of very eerie, calm weather, and that will move on very quickly. Again, that is not a time to be outside. Very serious weather. The backside of Hurricane Hugo will then come across and smack us yet one more time.
We got knocked off the air shortly after that, but our crews were out in the storm.
Right now it is 10 o'clock on the battery. Hurricane Hugo is just 2 hours away, and the rain is stinging all of our faces. We really shouldn't even be out here.
Great. Yeah,
why are you out here?
Why not? They got nothing better to do. The lights out at the house.
O'clock Thursday night. Tropical storm force winds become hurricane force winds, and Hugo begins to cut his deadly path through the Low Country. Winds rip through the area. Electrical power tries to hang on, but eventually fails. Power is out now in much of North Charleston with the eye of Hurricane Hugo due in about an hour. The rain and the wind have become more and more severe. But then, total calm, and guests at a North Charleston motel peer out directly into the eye of Hurricane Hugo.
I didn't really believe it was going to be this calm. It's really neat. Just like it just stopped, dead. It was wild. This is eerie, really eerie, knowing that possibly the worst of it's still yet to come.
I hate to see the rest of it. It was like the first part.
The guests used a few precious minutes of the eye's calm to collect metal that Hugo ripped from the motel's overhangs. So the wind is starting to pick up now. The eye is passing over North Charleston. People are getting back in their rooms and getting ready for round 2 of Hurricane Hugo. Gary Ross, TV2 Action News, North Charleston.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Ashley for TV2 Action News. It is 6:45 early Friday morning, September 22nd. Day 1 after Hurricane Hugo, as the cleanup and the restorations of our home begin.
By Friday daybreak, we were back on the air, and our crews fanned out in several directions recording the damage. We were shocked by what we found.
At about 10 o'clock last night, Myrtle Beach was considered the most likely spot for Hurricane Hugo to come ashore, and it certainly looked the part. 60-mile-per-hour winds were already whipping the streets, and Hurricane Hugo was moving slowly northward up the coast, but still some local beachfront residents decided to ride it out.
It was terrifying. It was, it's just hard to explain unless you were here. The wind, the force, the not knowing, the uncertainty. We felt like the worst was over when it finally touched down.
But by the early morning hours, the worst was over. Clearly, there'd been some major damage done on the Grand Strand, but only daylight would tell us just how much. But morning brought relatively good news. Yes, there was millions of dollars of damage to beachfront property, but it could have been much, much worse. Myrtle Beach did get winds upwards of 100 miles per hour, but it did not get the 17-foot tidal surge that hit further south.
Get your stuff and you're going to go with one of the civilian drivers, okay?
All right. This morning, the South Carolina National Guard was sent in to secure the downtown area until all live wires and other debris had been cleared from the streets. The area is expected to be without electricity for at least another 24 hours. In Myrtle Beach, Ren Scott, TV2 Action News.
Hurricane Hugo ravaged Mount Pleasant's pricey Sneef Farms development. Winds of up to 130 miles an hour whipped through every neighborhood. And while most of the houses withstood the storm, wind laid waste to yards and streets everywhere. Many of the residents of Sneef Farm were proud of their tree-lined streets, but now they're paying an unexpected price for the scenery. Joe Maupin's front yard was once one of the best kept in the neighborhood. Today, he climbed over tree limbs to get inside a home, which was also invaded by a fallen tree limb.
Well, I got, a hole in the roof that's come down through the attic and into the second floor. And then, of course, outside, where there was 200 trees, there were probably 25 left.
Buzzsaws are the rallying cry as neighbors help each other clear the trees from the roads and from the roofs.
No, y'all getting it, not me.
A large oak tree crashed through Barbara Francis' roof. Rain, insulation, and roofing followed.
And water came in later. It sounded like a little waterfall coming in. And it hit his room, it hit the playroom, and it hit this room. And this room looks the worst.
Many of the houses in Sneef Farms are not only more expensive than elsewhere, but better built. They held up well despite being close to the eye of the storm. Up the road near Awendaw, tin shacks collapsed into worthless debris. Speculation is that 3 out of 4 trees in the area have been knocked down, and lumber companies are expected to help with the cleanup. Meanwhile, on Sneef Farm, cleanup has begun, and most of the neighbors tonight are not trying to count the trees, just their blessings. St. Brian, TV2 Action News, Mount Pleasant.
By early this morning, it was obvious this was not the city that we had left behind. Debris and glass is strewn all up and down King Street in downtown Charleston, and police are fighting off looters. The city marina has displaced itself with large vessels in the street and in somebody's front yard. Even a barge has come a-calling. People who remained in the city took to higher ground.
So we took about 1.5 foot of water through the whole downstairs. Right now it's about 1/2 inch deep in mud down there. But it all settled. All the sewers start backing up.
We watched out of the window up there and we saw the shed pick up and move over the top. This is a 10-foot hedge that was on the side of it, and it went over the top of that. And then we heard loud noises, and we never saw the tree go down. It was just all of a sudden one big loud noise.
Along Charleston's battery, there was about 6 inches of water, much less than originally expected. Charleston's historic homes along the battery remained true and steadfast. Charleston's White Point's garden did not. Trees along the Battery Park were chopped to bits by Hugo. The holy city looks as though it has been scorned, with churches some of the city's saddest sights. This renovation project is now hopeless. But as bad as it may seem, the situation is not. Where there are people, there is hope. And most of the people were able to get out in time.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. I think we want to head back to Allendale, where we're transmitting from. This is our backup TV2. Our studios, as we mentioned, sustaining some damage from Hurricane Hugo as well. So we won't be able to broadcast from our regular studios, but we are continuing to broadcast and staying on the air from Allendale, our transmitter site. And that's where Dan Ashley and a host of TV2 personnel are located right now. Dan, back to you.
Thank you, Rob. And Leslie, as you mentioned, our transmitter facility here in Allendale has done us well. We had a team of crack engineers who absolutely broke their backs all night long to keep us on the air. We did get kicked off for a while, but they were able to get us back on first thing in the morning. They've done a fantastic job.
Hugo had torn off part of our roof and ruined some editing equipment at the station. If you saw our 6 and 11 o'clock newscast on Friday, you saw Terry Casey anchoring outside of the National Weather Service, a temporary broadcast site.
Back to our hurricane coverage, taking you now to North Charleston. It certainly didn't escape the wrath of Hugo when he hit, and what seemed to be a forest of trees was cut down by Hugo's winds. Trees and power lines crisscrossed streets and highways. Roofs and paneling were ripped from more homes and other buildings than really you could count. It was staggering just to drive, for example, down Rivers Avenue, which we did last night, or rather early this morning. And it still is staggering, even in the daylight. Crews are going to be back on the streets tomorrow morning at first light to resume their cleanup efforts.
But by Saturday, we were back in our studios. Not exactly like normal, but with an effective new tool. Eagle Sky 2 was sending back live helicopter pictures that gave some their first look at the Isle of Palms and at Sullivan's Island. Anyone trying to go to the Isle of Palms or Sullivan's Island by boat is now subject to arrest as well. There will be absolutely no access to those areas. They are now under martial law.
Which leaves many of you, I'm sure, starving for information about what happened to your homes, what may have happened to your property on the Sullivan's Island or the Isle of Palms. And we are going to give you a first-hand look right now as we go live to Judge Chapin. You see him
Leslie and Terry, I can't hear you up here, but I'll tell you what we're going to show you. We're looking out the window right now. This is the northern end of Sullivan's Island. We're going to be traveling north up the coastline across Sullivan's and Isle of Palms. You can see the devastation out here. Every single house has been affected some way or another. People who are watching are wondering what has happened. They can see. Storm surge has moved and wind has moved the structures from along this street right here is right on the coastline. It's moved everything back all the way across into the intercoastal waterway. We're crossing the bridge between Sullivan's and Isle of Palms at this time. There are entire blocks out here. They're just missing the houses there. You can see the foundations, but the buildings are gone. A lot of the houses on the southern end here of Isle of Palms that we're coming up to, which originally we thought had been washed away, are new construction. There were not any homes here. A lot of wind damage to the roofs. The bottom floors have been knocked away. Tremendous amount of debris still blocking the streets. No one is out here moving up and down now. Apparently, they have gotten the rest of the residents off the island. We've only seen a couple of police cars, emergency vehicles, and National Guard Jeep moving up and down. Not much movement. Very quiet. They have made some progress today in cleaning off some of these streets, getting the power lines out of the way, and so forth.
When we come back, more on the aftermath of Hugo as the Low Country rebuilds. Stories of despair and stories of hope.
Nobody else. No place to sleep, nothing, eat, nothing. Just gone.
Now, of course, the vital link, as you well know, between Sullivan's Island and the Isle of Palms is something called the Ben Sawyer Bridge.
Yes, but right now the Ben Sawyer Bridge is at an angle like this. It is completely unattached and has been swinging in the wind. Now it's just standing upright, and highway officials are trying to get it fixed in some way, sometime. And our TV2 St. Brian is standing by live on the Mount Pleasant side of that bridge. St., what are the latest details on when that bridge might be fixed?
Well, Terry, Leslie, first of all, let me tell you that this bridge, of course, is completely impassable. I took up I took a walk to the edge just a few minutes ago, and as someone who crosses this bridge almost day in and day out, it's really a tragic sight. Isle of Palms Mayor, this is the latest, Isle of Palms Mayor Carmen Bunch has asked Governor Carol Campbell for a makeshift bridge to help people cross. But highway officials say they really can't give an estimate as to when any kind of makeshift bridge or pontoon would be able to connect the islands with Mount Pleasant. Now, earlier today, we toured this bridge from chopper. Let's go to those pictures and we can show you what it looks like from high in the sky. Hurricane Hugo whipped the bridge every which way but loose. The concrete below the gear shift has cracked. Highway officials have estimated it will take 5 to 7 days before they really can start work on the bridge. The idea would be to lift up and secure one side of it, try to put it back in place. Now, the Army Corps of Engineers would have to then monitor any of the traffic crossing just to make sure that the bridge is safe. And, of course, if you're trying to get to the bridge at this point, the thing to do is to, you're not going to be able to get across, of course. If you want any information on what's going on in Sullivan's Island or on the Isle of Palms, the idea would be to go to the Mount Pleasant Holiday Inn on Route 17. They have liaison officials there who have toured the island. Maybe they can help you out with the property. But right now, there's just no getting across. And, of course, if you do get across, even by boat, you'd be arrested. So just don't even think about trying to cross into Sullivan's Island or Isle of Palms.
We're circling an area near Island. One of the problems that these people have out here is that they have so much damage from tree limbs and tops of trees and whole trees falling on everything. They have no power. Normally this time of night you'd see lights scattered all over out here, and now it's going to be dark. They don't have the word. They've asked that people not burn in this area because there's not enough water pressure or water to fight any fires if they got out of control. So people like this down here have no way of knowing not to do what they're doing, to burn their trash and rubble. The destruction in this area, I think, is as bad or worse than any place I've seen anywhere along the coast. There is a whole community here coming up on our left front as we pass over it that is almost every house has been destroyed. It's like nothing I've ever seen. It's almost like a war, I guess you could say. Just everything in his path is gone, destroyed. There are people in this area. They're allowed in here, but it's not like the Isle of Palms. They've been in this area all day cleaning up. This is the area I was speaking about earlier where the older gentleman rode out the storm, said he would never, ever do that again. You can see this destruction out to our left now as we come across. It's absolute, total destruction of everything out here. Some of these were 2- and 3-story homes on stilts. They just disappeared. All you see is rubble, a few foundations, empty swimming pools. Most all of the work that's being done out here by people trying to clean up will come to a halt here shortly. As it gets dark, they will not be able to see. And last night when we were out here, it was just pitch black. And you couldn't see probably 10 feet. It looks like it'll be the same way tonight, even though the skies are clearing and we've got a beautiful sunset to the west. And that's it from our end up here, Terry, Leslie. We'll take it back to you now.
Yeah, today the Reverend Jesse Jackson came to Charleston because of our tragedy and devastation here. He is trying, of course, just to spread a little hope to the people of Charleston and the outlying areas. TV2's Angela Brown has details.
The fury of Hurricane Hugo is over, but its destruction has crippled all of Charleston and surrounding areas. The damage is so great, many people wonder if their neighborhoods will ever be the same. But today, the Reverend Jesse Jackson paid a visit for personal and motivational reasons.
I have friends and relatives here. I'm from South Carolina, and so I am concerned. I'm delighted that in the face of all of this tragedy and pain and loss of property, that human lives have been saved.
These are some of the neighborhoods Reverend Jackson visited. Jackson says he is stunned by all the damage, but says it's now time to rebuild. He's encouraging people to do just that.
Many of the young people who are unemployed and unskilled should really have a chance now to learn to become roofers and brick masons and plasterers and painters and help rebuild a new Charleston.
Jackson says when he gets back to Washington, the Rainbow Coalition will work to bring food and other necessities to damaged areas. He says he will also fight to get aid for Charleston.
The storm turning trees into toothpicks and uprooting houses and cranes is just an amazing and awesome display of God's power when he speaks. On the other hand, I think about how many people are standing in food lines, but thank God food is at the end of the line. You could be standing in lines at the funeral home watching the remains of a loved one.
So tonight, many people in Charleston have a little more hope, which makes it easier to put their lives and their homes back in order.
I need water, I need cold water, I need food, my baby needs pampers. We can live here.
Early this morning, people began forming long lines wrapping around the Sam's Wholesale in North Charleston, hoping for a chance just to buy the bare necessities.
Some candles, bread, maybe some matches and stuff that we're going to need for the rest of the week until the light comes back on.
And while Sam's was selling at cost, others were not.
$5,000. $1,000 just for one generator on gas.
And how much can you usually sell them for?
$200.
Other profit makers seemed in poor taste.
This shirt cost $13. I got a Ramada Inn, and the guy made him, I think, Friday night. He was from Atlanta.
But not everyone was trying to make a profit. When a cup of coffee was like a cup of gold this morning, these ladies were giving it away for free.
We've been pouring coffee since 6 o'clock yesterday. We got a generator, and that's all we can offer. What my daughter said, Sherman couldn't destroy Charleston, and neither could Hugo.
Other luxuries are long gone. Generators are being sent from Savannah to get this gas station pumping again. Wishful motorists began lining up at 7 o'clock this morning.
Trying to get some gas. I lost my whole home. I lost everything.
By noontime, tempers were flaring.
The station is right there. We have the gas, right? The generators are there. Why can't we get somebody to open the station so we can get people moving and stuff like that? Why have them wait here for 4 hours?
And the situation is only going to get more frustrating until safe drinking water and power are restored. But judging by the looks of the South Carolina Electric and Gas building, it could be a long wait. Leslie Lyles, TV2 Action News, North Charleston.
In the wake of Hurricane Hugo, this section of Awendaw resembled a war zone. Falling very close to the eye of the storm, the area was hit with a 12-foot tidal surge, turning dozens of homes into piles of wood. Residents Kim and David Hendricks say they were apprehensive about evacuating, but today they surveyed the damage and thank God that they did.
And I thought maybe the trailer would be tipped over or maybe sideways or bent up, but I never imagined that it would just be gone.
Everything gone. Said the water was like 10 or 12 feet here and just some pluff mud everywhere and all our stuff, and we're just digging through. Have no hope to find it all.
But as bad as Awendaw was hit, the barrier islands may have been hit even worse. It could be weeks or even months before the damage is sorted out on Sullivan's Island in Isle of Palms.
Isle of Palms was ground zero for Hugo. Winds gusting up to 140 miles per hour turned up a 17-foot tidal surge that pounded island homes throughout the night. Perhaps the most vivid example of Hugo's strength was its destruction of Yacht Harbor. More than 50 expensive yachts were torn from their moorings and tossed around like toys. It had earlier been reported that the front row of beach homes had been destroyed and washed out to sea. Our trip today found those houses damaged, but still on land and certainly not destroyed. Martial law remains in force on the island, and National Guardsmen are expected to remain on the beach for the next several days. Earlier reports had Sullivan's Island faring better than the Isle of Palms, but this aerial view makes that quite hard to believe. Today, city officials reported that 95% of the island had been destroyed, and martial law has been declared there as well. It's striking how arbitrary Hugo was with this island. A house perfectly intact stands next to a house completely destroyed. Overall, the south end of the island appears to have weathered the storm better than the north, but signs of destruction are apparent from end to end. With the Ben Sawyer Bridge still completely out of commission, it will probably be several weeks before residents are able to return. Residents are warned not to try and travel to the island by boat. They will be turned away by National Guardsmen on the shore. Perhaps the biggest surprise of the barrier islands is Folly Beach. Long known for erosion problems, many oceanfront homes seem to have weathered the storm quite well. But there are dozens of signs of Hugo's fury, including the landmark Atlantic restaurant, now nothing but pilings in the sea. Like all island residents, the residents of Folly Beach still have plenty of work ahead of them, but they can take comfort in the fact that many expected this island to get hit much worse. Flying in Eagle Sky 2, this is Ren Scott, TV2 Action News.
We have snakes. You know what? Snakes have left their habitat. Are you going to go with shoes or boots?
No, ma'am. I don't want to go.
Okay, well, that's what I'm telling you. We're trying to clear that so you all could get there and be safe.
Isle of Palms Mayor Carmen Bunch set the record straight this evening. No residents will be allowed on the island until Monday. Bunch declared martial law after Hurricane Hugo blasted the island and destroyed many of the homes. But residents want to see their property now.
Martial law is one thing, but my God, these people are just trying to find out what's going on at their homes. That's all they want to do. Let them go, check in, show proof of residency, and walk to their homes, look at it, and leave. That's all we want.
This martial law thing now is going a little far. There's a way that you can manage it manageably without running 8 or 10 people over the ferry and dropping them off in a van.
Bunch says she'll ferry the residents to the island on Monday or Tuesday of next week. They'll be taken to their houses by a Wild Dunes van. Bunch says just getting around the island is a problem.
Mike Tinky has called me. He's having a crew come to clear the way. All the beautiful trees and Wild Dunes are over the road. We have to clear the trees out to get to the homes.
The Isle of Palms police say they arrested 3 people today for looting and are using their shotguns to show they mean business.
At this point, we're going to take you downtown because you have to understand there's a curfew downtown as well, and a lot of people haven't been able to get back to their offices or down to the Battery. So this is just an aerial view of downtown, and as you can see, again, rooftop damage is the order of the day. Everybody got hit. Some of the homes, the larger homes down in the Battery, held up pretty well, but as you get back with some of the old Charleston homes, they really took a beating. And again, you need to know that there's a 6 p.m. curfew downtown. They do not want you downtown. Your storefronts and houses are being protected by the National Guard to keep looters from coming in there. But there's no need to get down there. You have no electricity, and there is no gas, and all the things you need to work on your home. So let them get the area in order before you go down there. And as you can see, as bad as the storm was, good old historic Charleston up quite well. It's not the first hurricane that this area has seen.
Only 24 houses completely collapsed. Now, one man was killed when his house collapsed on Council Street, but that is the only death we have confirmed downtown so far.
By Sunday, a few things were very clear, tragically clear. It would take weeks at best to restore power to everyone. Food, water, and ice were hot commodities to most, and some people were just thankful it was Sunday.
Holy, holy, holy. Voices rang through First Scots Presbyterian Church this morning. The congregation sang of praise and thanks despite the destruction Hurricane Hugo had done to many of their homes. When the storm had cleared, many realized they had lost everything except their faith.
Our history is that of a hardy people who have withstood earthquake and war, fire and storm. Increase our faith that today, relying on you, we can become examples to our descendants of what it means to be committed disciples in the face of destruction.
The mood at this church was calm but grew emotional as they continued their service of prayer and song. One of the messages being delivered compared Charlestonians with the disciples who weathered the storm on the Sea of Galilee.
They were blinded for they could not see where they were going, just as we could not see what was happening outside during the storm, but they were blinded to the power and presence of Jesus Christ during the midst of the storm. Yes,
and as they continued to pray, the congregation was reminded by their minister that this time they are the victims, but that all things are healed through God and time. The ministers of First Scots Presbyterian Church hope now their congregation has the strength and encouragement to go back to their communities and continue rebuilding their homes and their lives. Angela Brown, TV2 Action News, Charleston.
Perhaps the most striking view of Hurricane Hugo's destruction comes from up in the air.
It does. Eagle Sky 2 helicopter pilot Judd Chapin joins us now for an aerial look at the damage of the McClellanville area. Judd?
Terry, Leslie, we're right over the intercoastal waterway coming into the town of McClellanville. It's really hard to imagine, I guess, unless you sat through this thing, how forceful this wall of water was that came through this town. The back surge itself must have been tremendous. There are cars and trucks just out our left door that are sitting in the edge of the waterway, the river here, that have been sucked back in. No telling how much debris and stuff is clogging these channels. We're coming now over the town itself. A lot of the houses are still intact. Look, you know, a lot better shape than some of the ones down toward Awada and some out on the islands. At least these people are fortunate enough that most of their homes are still here. But the water had to have been all the way up through the first floor, if not into the second floor. A lot of the trees are down in this area like all the rest of the area. Just a tremendous amount of damage. Well, let's take a look here a minute as we cruise by. And we're coming up on the west side of the town, near the shrimp docks. These people's main livelihood up here is fishing, shrimping, and so forth. Their homes are not only touched, but also their businesses. There's a house coming up here across the river, you'll see. This is on the south side of the river from the town itself. These folks now have about a half dozen or better new residents in their backyard, all fishing boats. These are not small boats either. These are full-size ocean-going shrimpers that are sitting up next to these houses. As we move back down the channel toward the intercoastal, you'll see their fuel barges, their workshops, everything has been destroyed. A number of boats are sunk, capsized, and a great many of them are high and dry on land. One of the problems they're going to have here once we get through the cleanup is the ecological effect it's going to have on this area. A tremendous amount of oil and fuel has gone from these ruptured boats. There was a large fuel storage tank here that's ruptured. All of that has gone into the intercoastal and out into the wildlife sanctuary here offshore.
All right, well, you know, a lot of people have been working, as you heard, and as you hopefully know by now. One of those who has been doing an excellent job up to and during the hurricane is in the Charleston area, but he doesn't live here. He makes his home down south in the southern part of Florida. His name is Robert Sheets. He is director of the National Hurricane Center. And he is with?
He is with our own Dan Ashley, and they are downtown. They are not at our weather center. They're downtown. Dan, what is Mr. Sheets doing downtown?
Well, we're going to ask him and find out, Leslie. We were standing down here getting ready to do another live report, and who should walk by but Dr. Bob Sheets of the National Hurricane Center. Tell us first what you're doing here, Bob.
Well, of course, we were looking to see the damage itself, doing a little bit of survey, see how high the storm surge came up, and here I came in this area, and some nice lady let me stay there last night, and I'm going to stay there tonight, I think, unless they throw me out.
What is your sense of the damage that you've seen here?
In the Charleston area, I think that it's not unexpected. Not unexpected at all, the degree of damage here as compared to out on the Barrier Islands. We've seen here on Sullivan Island and, of course, on Isle of Pines and up in the Wild Dunes area that I think it was more than I expected. I flew across that area yesterday. We did a whole survey across there yesterday morning, and from the air, it didn't look as bad as it does from the ground.
That's what other people have told me as well. Now, you said, obviously, you've seen many a hurricane. The damage from this one, you say, is impressive given the others.
No question about it. I've looked in the wake of Hurricanes Frederick and Anita and Elena, and we've done similar surveys, and I think over area-wide that this is more damage. Now, some others I've seen it where on the Barrier Islands they've swept it clean and there was sand. Now, here most of the houses, or many of the houses, are structures are still there, and I think that's what fooled us from the air, because you get down below and you find out there's a lot of damage in those houses.
All right. Are you still studying Hurricane Hugo, what we really felt here? Are you still reviewing the information?
Right. We'll put it all together. One of the key things in our program is what we call the slosh model, the storm surge model, and that was the key that was used for the evacuation process here in the Charleston area. And so we now go back and make sure that the model did it right, and I think it did pretty well. I think the one thing we have found here, and we knew that at the time, was we're lucky. If we really look at this hurricane and see what it could have done had it been 20 miles farther south, and then Charleston would have been in the core of the problem. As we went up the inland waterway here today, and you go by the Isle of Pines and up onto the Wild Dunes area, and you see the tremendous rise in the storm surge. It's down here, it's around 7 to 8 feet is my best estimate right now. but down there it just rises up to it's probably 15 or a little bit higher than that. And if you get over in the wildlife area over there, I suspect somewhere around 20. So shift it 20 miles, and you got a big problem right here.
Okay. Dr. Sheets, thank you very much. A nice surprise to see you here. I know you'll be in town for a couple of days evaluating what has happened here. Thank you very much, Dr. Sheets. Well, we'll go back to you, a surprise visitor, someone we talked to long before Hugo hit, and he's here with us now again. Terry and Leslie.
Meantime, Ren Scott yesterday took an aerial tour of damage around the barrier islands in Charleston County. You went to a different place today, didn't you?
Yeah, well, yesterday we were out in the barrier islands. We're on Folly Island, Sullivan's Island, Isle of Palms. And the idea is we can get up in the air in our helicopter and see and show people what they can't see. Today we took a little different turn. Today we went out and picked up, just Judge Chapin showed you a little earlier what was happening in McClellanville. I'm going to pick it up just a little bit south of McClellanville and show you that the extent of the damage goes all the way down the coast. And what we're going to do here, this is an area right around McClellanville, just south of McClellanville. And what you can see here is all this debris was picked up in the Bulls Bay area and just brought all the way inland, probably about 200 or 300 yards across the way, all the way down the coast. And we're going to stay with this for a while and just show you the extent of the damage. All this stuff strewn about. These formerly were homes. This is just not trash thrown about. These are, you can't really tell where the homes were and where the debris is just strewn, but it's like this for miles and miles and miles down the coast. And if you look at some of the objects you see there, there's a refrigerator. Coming up here, you're going to see a Mercedes-Benz nose down. You can only really imagine the force of the storm. And one of the reasons we're putting this on the air and doing it as often as possible is so people can understand just how devastated some of the other families are. There are a lot of very fortunate people in the Low Country, and these people really need help out in this area. Of all the areas we've seen from the air, this is clearly the most heaviest hit. These people are trying to put together, that was actually a house right behind this woman. In a minute, you're going to see their clothes were blown from their bayfront homes up into the trees. This is about 200 or 300 yards from the water, and these people are literally going back and trying to pull things out. Pelicans are just starting to come out. The force of the storm blew them back several hundred yards into the marsh, and we went back there. If you try to take a picture of them, they hiss at you and come after you. So we didn't dare do that. We've got enough troubles right now, but this was the first one we saw kind of emerge, and I guess it's a sign of things slowly getting back to normal. I'm just going to let this roll for a while, because one thing that people keep asking us when we fly and land in areas is how bad is the tree damage, and is it as bad in other parts of the Low Country as it is right here? As you can see, Terry and Leslie, it is just devastating. There's an estimated 3/4 of the trees in certain areas are just down, and you know, if you look at these pictures, there's no doubt about it. They've just been wiped out. Some of these houses did stand up pretty well to the storm, but again, you'll go right next door and somebody is completely leveled. And we've just been flying around in awe, looking down at this area, and a picture's worth 1,000 words. There you can see how close they are to the water, and there was a storm surge of somewhere from 12 to 17 feet. It came all the way across, covered this whole area, kept it underwater, and reached up to Highway 17, they tell me. We have not had a chance to get up to the people who were 3 or 4 miles inland to see how they fared, but you can see the people on the coast did not fare too well. The good news is most of these people were well aware of where they were living and did evacuate. This is an interesting shot. We're coming back towards Charleston, south of McClellanville now, and I don't know where this little house came from because there's nothing in the area. Again, it just shows the tremendous force of the storm. We're going to come around the point here and come into the Bay Area, and this is Hobcaw Point. Again, no area was spared. You can see a lot of tree damage. What you cannot see here is a lot of water damage. Obviously, they're very close to the water, and everybody was flooded there, but you can see the houses on a relative scale did pretty well. Now, this is an interesting thing. If anybody's looking for the Spirit of Charleston tour this weekend, we found it. It is up the Cooper River about 3 or 4 miles north of the Navy base. I don't know how it got there. We haven't been able to contact authorities, but I imagine they brought it upriver to try to moor it, and it broke away from its mooring. And as we were heading up towards the Goose Creek Monk's Corner area, we just came by it and thought we'd put it on the air. All around the Bay Area, you'll see Coast Guard trips like this. These folks are searching for, hopefully, survivors. There are a lot of areas where bodies have been spotted. They're not confirmed sightings. People have called and said, we've seen this and we've seen that, and we think it could be somebody floating. So the Coast Guard is certainly out there looking. This is the chicken farm run by the monks up at Mepkin Abbey. They have about 45,000 chickens there, which they will have to send to slaughter tomorrow because their housing is gone. These are chickens that they keep for usually a year at a time. They're egg-laying chickens, but they will now go to slaughter and become chicken soup as of tomorrow. We're going to move up to Goose Creek a little bit, and again, you can see this area did quite well on a relative scale. Again, a lot of tree damage, but you don't have the water damage that they had closer to the coastal areas. But again, no one was spared, and everybody is, I don't mean to belittle any part of the low country because everybody has their own struggle, and indeed, the people in Goose Creek have theirs as well, but it was not quite as bad as we saw, certainly, in the McClellanville area. And pretty soon we're going to take you to what is called the Medway Plantation. We flew out there today because we found that there were about a dozen people trapped in this plantation. They are about 15 miles off any roadway, and there are so many trees down in the various roadways getting out of there that they cannot leave the area. Luckily, they're well stocked with food, but as you can see, they had very heavy wind and tree damage, and just like everybody else, they are digging out. So I hope that helps people get a little insight into the damage around the area. Again, we're just trying to get up and let you get a view of what we've been able to see. It was a tremendous storm, and maybe you can see your home there, or you can see someone else's home and maybe find out if they're okay or report back.
Yeah, it's tough to find words to accurately describe the awe that you said.
You can't. You can just look at it and just say, I hope everybody got out. I hope that they got out.
And one thing I can say, we've been flying around the different areas, and every time we see something that looks very serious, we land, and knock on wood, so far, every time we've landed, we've had good news. People evacuated. They're coming back to the destruction, but they're alive and well, so we got a lot to be thankful for.
While many people were worried about just surviving the storm, there were some doctors and nurses working to bring new life into the low country.
Meet baby Hugo. That's the nickname of newborn Jonathan Fuller, born in the eye of Hurricane Hugo at St. Francis Hospital in Charleston.
I was so scared. I didn't know which of them were worried about, what was happening inside my wife or what was happening outside the building.
But at least I'll have a birthday to remember.
It's a day the people at the medical university will never forget either. MUSC President James Edwards toured the neonatal unit this afternoon.
We were as prepared as anyone could be. I've never seen such courage and performance in the face of personal dangers I saw the other night.
When the storm hit, 191 patients were moved into the corridors. The hospital expects to have power back on tonight, but supplies are still limited.
We've had people ask for formula to take home with their babies, and we've just had to tell them we don't have that capability to give them formula. So we're asking the moms to try to breastfeed if at all possible.
Area hospitals say they're only limited to helping out in emergency care situations.